Hey, this is Cheryl Nembhard.
And this is Dwayne Beckford.
And you're listening to the Safe Space Podcast,
a limited series podcast on Black men and mental health.
Today's episode is one that I've been waiting for a while. It affects me personally. I live it every day. We are talking about fatherlessness and its impact on Black men's mental health. My goodness, Dwayne.
It's a big one.
I think both of us can speak to it from some angles. How has fatherlessness impacted your life?
Wow. Well, I can say that not having my father at a young age has shaped a lot of my development or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Not having my father, to set certain examples, I have a phenomenal mother who did the best she could under the circumstances, but there are just some things that only a man can teach a boy trying to become a man. And so I know that my life has been impacted in the absence of a father. And so many Black men have this story. And I believe that, especially in the Black community, we are disproportionately affected by the absence of fathers. So I think this is going to be a great conversation today.
Yeah, and for me, it's been a father wound that I've been working on healing my entire life. And for those that are joining me in that, I'm so excited that we have incredible powerhouse people that will share personally and from a clinical standpoint. Please welcome our experts here. Once again, we have the powerhouse Roxanne Francis in the building, Jermaine Morrison, and Troy Crossfield joining us. You're going to get to hear about them in just a minute. Why don't you introduce our guests?
All right, so first we have Jermaine, who is a social worker who's been involved in many community projects and initiatives over the last 20 years. He's worked alongside many reputable institutions, including York University, Seneca College, the City of Toronto, Toronto District School Board, and Francis Psychotherapy, where he's currently serving as an associate therapist. Jermaine continues to advocate for better access to mental health services for the Black community and facilitate mental health seminars and speaking engagements in the GTA. So let's welcome Jermaine.
Welcome, powerhouse.
Happy to be back once again.
Yeah, I love having your voice weighing in on this podcast, Jermaine. I am so privileged to introduce, hopefully for the first time, if you've not yet known her, Roxanne Francis. She's an award-winning registered social worker and psychotherapist. She is the CEO of Francis Psychotherapy and Consulting Services, where she runs a busy group therapy practice. She's also a keynote speaker, leadership coach, and a corporate consultant who addresses issues related to women's issues, race and equity, mental health, parenting, as well as wellness at work. Roxanne supports and mentors other therapists in the field. And if you don't know, you just need to turn on your news for this one. She is media's go-to mental health expert, providing answers to many of life's difficult questions. Will you welcome my girl, Roxanne Francis?
Yes.
Thanks for having me. Thank you for having me.
And lastly, but surely not surely, as the saying goes.
We got some family in the building.
We got family in the house. I want to introduce my brother, Troy Crossfield. Is an accomplished individual with a diverse skill set that includes acting, music, and filmmaking. That's the short list. Let me tell you, I could talk about this brother all day. But he is the co-founder, and president of Crossfield House Productions. He is committed to bringing the stories of Black Canadians to the world through the art of theater and film. He has received recognition for his work in the industry, having been featured in numerous plays and films as a lead actor and signed to OAZ Talent Agency. Additionally, Troy has a major songwriting publishing deal with Sony ATV, a renowned U.S. recording label. And as I said, that's the short list of accomplishments for this king, a mentor in my life and a true brother. Troy, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation today.
Thank y'all both for having me, and I'm just so thankful to be here.
Man, I'm so excited because I think all of us will be able to speak from either having known someone, growing up with someone, treated someone, or they themselves have experienced fatherlessness. So this is going to be close to home for all of us. Let me kick off the conversation with this question. How does growing up without a father impact a child's emotional and mental development? Can you sort of walk us through how fatherlessness impacts the individual? I'll start with you, Roxanne.
There is this idea in child development. It's called mirroring. When a child is really, really small and an adult cares for that child, the child is able to uh, almost get a reflection of who they are from their interaction with that adult. You get a sense of who you are in this world. You get a sense of your worth in this world. You get a sense of your possibilities in this world through your interaction with your caregiver. And the idea of mirroring becomes more significant when there are two parents in the home, when there are two loving individuals who are caring for you. And there are so many families that are raised by a strong matriarch who's the only caregiver in the home. But when there is a father in the home that is also offering that kind of mirroring, it's almost like both sides of the coin begin to develop, and this child is able to understand their value, their worth, especially a boy growing up who's growing up with his father has an idea of how to channel anger, what to do with their anxiety, who can I speak to when I feel afraid. All of these pieces develop very, very strongly when you are raised with a father in the home. When the child gets older and is getting involved in um, intimate relationships as you grow into your adulthood, your heart is broken. All of these pieces are uh, developed better, for want of a better phrase, when you have a father in the home. For girls, I know this podcast is specifically for men, but for girls as well, there's this idea of this this powerhouse of a man in my life loved me first. And so, women are young girls are not swayed by every young brother who comes up and whispers a thing or two in her ear, because she has an idea of her value, which is planted firmly by her father. So there's definitely that piece of confidence, self-esteem, worthiness, and really value that gets instilled when there's a father in the home. And on the other side, when there's fatherlessness, there's a lack thereof.
So
Absolutely.
good.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
for
much.
that. Jermaine, for you?
When I've worked with a lot of students, and this is to Roxanne's point, um, for a lot of kids, they do get a sense of what society is like. And what I mean by that is that, um, with a father that is there, that is present, and that is engaged, um, it is like a certain type of nurturing. There's a certain type of protectiveness that is there as compared to when a father is not really in the home. And it's not to say that moms can't do it, but you also have to understand that for a lot of mothers, they're having to juggle so much, right? And what ends up happening in terms of the relationship, especially between mother and child, is that when you have a mother that's working, let's say, 12 hours a week, right? She's not actively, that child is not getting that nurturing from a parent as they need to, because they're busy trying to handle a lot of other things, right? I think one of the other things, and we always talk about fatherlessness, but what I'm seeing now is not so much absent fathers per se, like in terms of the physical sense, because you still have fathers in the home, but they're not really the nurturing, or they're actively engaging with their child. And that's also a very unfortunate and dangerous circumstance, because what happens is, and I say this because, again, working in schools, you know the child has a really tough time navigating and even understanding the boundaries that they're supposed to navigate through when it just comes to society, whether it be in school or they're in the community. Fathers are there, but it's almost like they don't care. And that's almost like a different type of rejection, if that makes sense. Because, when a child is looking for that when the child is looking for that parent to be the nurturer, to be somebody that they can look to for protection or look to for some help, if the father's not there and the mother is busy doing other things to try to keep everything together, it becomes a precarious situation for that child. And it really does affect a child's development in terms of their own self-love, and in terms of even just cognitively how they see life.
Thank you for that. And Troy, for you, I know this is a very personal issue. You have grown up without a father, and you've shared openly how it's affected you. Please tell us now.
Um, it's kind of interesting because now that I have a son, I see everything that I missed as a father. The engagement, the relationship, the warnings, even the memories that I share with my son now. I'm not gonna lie, I was scared when I found out I was having a son. It was different for me as a daughter because I was naturally born as a nurturer. You know, growing up with 5 women in the household, my mother, no brothers. I kind of took on their, personalities, responsibilities, and stuff like that, and learned how to kind of do both. My mom kind of was trying to train me in fatherhood, but she couldn't. So I just felt like there was this thing that I was supposed to have downloaded in me. You know what I mean? And it wasn't there. Um, and it's just like not even just somebody showing up to the games or whatever, just from an emotional intelligence standpoint, like really having to figure everything out on your own, sitting in a room like, what is my next step? Nobody to talk to you about like women or finances, anything like that, because my mom was busy raising children and working 3-4 jobs to survive. So the times that she did get to speak, it was kind of like, don't do this, work on them, good luck. She didn't even have time to come to my games. So now that I have my son, I'm like, oh man, like we're figuring stuff out together. But I just know that like so much was missing in me, and it's affected relationships in my life, affected marriage, affected, how I treated other women, affected every single aspect. And I'm not making that as an excuse, but it's different when you have a GPS because you know where you're going
Yeah,
Mm.
That's it.
versus when you don't have it, you
yeah.
That's it.
know? Um, so so that's kind of like how it affected me. And I definitely agree with the sentiments from Roxanne and Jermaine on everything else. So that's just the short end of the stick. And I did have a stepfather in my life, but because I was dealing with male abandonment issues, all these other kind of things, I didn't really accept him until later on in life. And I was like, man, I guess I kind of did have a father in my life, but I really felt like I didn't because I just, abandoned the whole idea. Even the fact that, and it sucks because even in our community, we don't call our stepfathers dad, we call them uncle. you
It's
know
true.
so there's a whole other situation that's associated to that. So yeah, that was my experience with it.
Well,
Wow.
before I had to jump in, Dwayne, because you just dropped two bombs right at the end. The fact that we, without a proper father in our lives, everyone else is uncle. Interesting. Never thought of it that way. But two, I wanted to just say this again in your hearing as you're listening and watching this podcast from Troy's mouth, that fatherlessness bleeds, impacts in a way that it bleeds into every aspect
Yep.
of a man's life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Troy was going down the list, and you wouldn't think that it would affect different areas, but it does. It shows up
It does.
in ways you don't even expect. Yeah.
And the
Sorry.
reason why is because it's an example. It's a perspective. So, you grow up with your mom, you have a certain perspective through her lens as a woman, but you're missing that same perspective and lens from a male's perspective. So now you get into adulthood, you become a man, and you're realizing that I'm navigating
Without a blueprint.
without a blueprint, as you said, GPS. So
Wow.
you have something, but you don't have a complete picture. You don't have a complete picture. And so that's where we make mistakes in our adulthood as men, is because we're operating somewhat in, I guess, female and feminine energy and missing that male perspective that would
Yeah.
really help us to make better decisions.
Listen,
And we don't even have the time to
yes.
get into like the
They're
historical
systemic.
trauma and
Yes.
why we are
Right.
as a community
That's
predominantly fatherless,
that's
because
another episode
there's
Yes.
some wicked bad
Facts.
behavior, as they say,
Yes.
things that have happened that have caused that. But Black men are always feeling behind the eight ball
Yeah.
because they're not just trying to navigate life, but they're trying to fill the holes as they go.
Yeah.
Man,
That's
this
crazy.
this we haven't even started. Troy, sorry, Troy, you messed me up. Dwayne, go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
it's real. It's keeping the real perspective. So second question, In your experience, what are some common challenges that arise for individuals who have grown up without a father, and how can they be addressed in therapy? So we'll just throw this to you, Roxanne and Jermaine. Roxanne, would you like to?
Yeah, one of the things that I see often is a lack of boldness, right? When a young boy is raised with a father, with an engaged father, as I'm referencing what Jermaine said earlier, with an engaged father in the home, that child goes through life knowing that someone has their back, right? Someone's going to show up for me at school if I get called to the office, and they're not going to just come to me with, they're going to come advocating for me, right? That child feels validated. That child feels if I fall, my dad's going to catch me, right? And if dad is not in the home, ma, again to Jermaine's point, mom is busy working 4 jobs trying to keep the roof over, the household. So she's not able to drop everything and come to school if you get called into the principal's office, right? So having an engaged father in the home, in the family, has a child walking with confidence, has a child feeling like I can actually go out and do the thing, right? There is a sense of validation. There is a sense of I can make a mistake, but I'll be okay, right? There is a sense of, I don't understand this, but I'm going to talk to my dad about it a little bit later, and I will have some understanding, right? And so, a child who is raised without their father, they go through life with a lot of questions, with a lot of unanswered questions, right? There's also, um, Jermaine was talking about having a mom who is busy doing a number of things because there's only that one adult or one parent. And I think that young Black men, Black boys, uh, experience that mom as someone who's miserable
Mm.
because she is
Mm-hmm.
doing a million
Mm-hmm.
things all at
Mm-hmm.
once. And so, how young Black boys, Black men interact with women a little bit later, that becomes it's under fire now because they're arguing with mom at home. Mom is really miserable. Why you didn't do this? Why you didn't do that? How come? Right? And so there's challenges as you engage in relationships a little bit later in your life, right? So there are a lot of ways that this fatherlessness really negatively impacts how you navigate the world. There is this sense of, you were all talking about blueprint. There's this sense of what came to my mind when you were talking was this idea of building the plane as you fly, right? When you are a Black man going through the world without a father figure in your life or without a father in your household, you get to a certain altitude and you're flying, but you can't sit back and put the plane on, what is it, autopilot? You can't just look out the window and enjoy the flight because you're busy trying to put it together as you go because no one did that for you. And it's exhausting and it causes you to lose focus.
Wow.
Mm.
I'm sorry. Before you go, Jermaine, I have to jump in there. You hit me right in the gut, Roxanne.
Sorry.
2 points you said there. No,
Don't be sorry.
this is therapy for me, honest to God. But when you said, just just a simple thing of being saying, I'll talk to dad later. I can't tell you how many times in my adolescence and teenage years, um, I just wish I could talk to my dad,
Mm,
and I feel the emotions coming just thinking about it. I get
Yeah,
chills thinking
me
about
too.
that simple thing of I'll just talk to my dad about it. And when you talked about our engagement with our moms who, out of stress and the challenge of life of trying to work to provide, sometimes our interactions with our moms have been less than what they could be, or the
mhm,
way that they'd want to interact with us because the stress of life. So it's really just about, I need you to do this, I need you to do that. And then we come up now, and then sometimes when we think about how Black men, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
in toxic masculinity and narcissism, we talk about sometimes Black men say, angry Black woman or what have you.
mm,
It's because of what you just said. We
mm.
interact with our moms who are dealing with so much already, and we don't get to receive
Yeah.
the nurturing that they really want to give us because they don't have the time
They don't
Mhm,
and they're
have,
frustrated.
mhm,
and can I not to correct, but to
Yeah.
add, it's not even a matter of time because it is time, but we don't have the capacity.
Yes.
right.
Yes.
You
Right.
know, we are weighed down by the pressures of life, so there's not much left by the time we get
Right. And
home.
then now our perspective is skewed of black women as we go into manhood. And that,
This
I'm
is so
sure,
good.
Troy could probably agree with me on this. We now look at black women or differently, and it's not anybody's fault. It's not really, well,
Listen, I want to get to Jermaine, but stuff is
yes.
unraveling as we
So,
speak, which is what we
No,
wanted.
talk.
Which is
No,
what we
talk.
wanted.
Keep
oh
I
my
talking.
want to say
goodness.
one thing as a confession.
Yeah.
As a female, I know we are focused and we are wholeheartedly here for the black man, for our kings. But as a female growing up without a father, I never felt safe.
Mm.
Mm,
And so
Yes.
it shows up differently for us as
Yes.
women. And so
hmm
any male became a threat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was
Yes.
Mm,
protecting myself constantly in this posture of
Yes.
defense and protection because
Yes.
I had the data. A lot of trauma happened to me, but then when I came out of it, even trying to heal, I still could not separate man from threat, man from, like, my wall was up. And so we talk about black men and how they even view women sometimes, like, what is the deal? But it's fatherlessness, believe it or not, showing up in different
On
ways.
both
Yeah.
sides.
Now
Yes.
meeting each
yeah.
other in adulthood, and you're thinking, why do I have to jump through hoops? I feel like I'm breaking through a wall here. Why can't you just trust me? Why is it so hard for me to love you, or for you to allow me to love you? This is a man speaking to a woman, and you would be surprised if you scratch back the layers for so many couples,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
fatherlessness, right? Jermaine, to you. Let me throw
Yes.
to
Yeah, and honestly, I appreciate you guys for just being very open about that, because these are conversations that amongst our own community doesn't really get outwardly talked about. You know what I mean? So first of all, I want to just say thank you guys for sharing that. Um, to that point, you guys hit a lot of points that I was going to say. One of the challenges I see in individuals, um, number one, rejection, right? Is that sense of rejection, because in a lot of ways it's like, especially for a lot of males that I've interacted with, as they go through life, they're already ready to kind of end relationships before they don't want to get emotionally too invested, because they've already had to deal with the fact that somebody that was supposed to be important in their lives is no longer there, right? So to be emotionally invested, to say in a intimate relationship, for example, it's really hard for them to really understand, and especially understand like women, right? For a long time they've had to be the brunt of the stress, if that makes sense, right? For a woman that's had to work long hours, who is overly stressed, trying to take care of their kids, but then all of a sudden there's arguments back and forth, right? So their view of black women or women in general, gets skewed in some way, shape, or form. I think the other challenges that I've also seen when it comes to individuals that had to grow up without a father is the sense of lack of accountability and boundaries, right? It's hard to understand, as a kid, and I'm just saying this like working with kids, right? You know, Kids, as they grow up, one of the most important things they need to know is where the boundaries lie. Yes, they push boundaries, but as long as they know where the boundaries lies, and it's hard to keep kids accountable when you don't really have two parents, especially on the same page, right? When it comes to um, basically like helping to nurture and grow a child up in this type of society. And so when you have a child that's growing up with a father, they don't see always see where the boundaries lie. It's a little bit more difficult because there isn't like necessarily like, and I don't want to use this in a negative way, but you don't see where the consequences until it's a bit too late. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. But I think one of the things especially when it comes to from a therapy perspective, and it is something that has to unpack, I think, for a lot of individuals that have to go through this, it's understanding what has happened, but also sometimes you may have to just accept the fact that, you know what, this happened, but what do I do moving forward? Because the fact that somebody else wasn't there is not indicative of who you are as an individual, right? And we have to emphasize this point. Yes, you didn't grow up with a father, or you saw your father become very abusive, but that is not an indication of who you are as a person. You can change your own story. You can change the narrative, but it is going to take a lot of acceptance of what has happened, and now embracing, okay, what do I do moving forward, so that if I have a child of my own, they don't have to experience the same thing that I've experienced.
Wow, such a great conversation, and it's getting my mind rolling on a couple of things, and I feel like I want to like tweak this third question to go with where you guys have gone. So let me ask it in this way. Um, how do cultural or societal factors influence a Black man's experience of fatherlessness? What I'm looking for is a conversation on the external factors that have triggered, amplified, or perpetuated fatherlessness, right? What are the things that have just made this what it is, made it worse, amplified it? Just anything you want to speak to about society and all the stuff outside of the individual, anything around that. Jermaine, I'd love to start with you if that's okay.
Oh man. All right. So honestly, I think when you look at like cultural factors, I always go back to basically the evolution or the redefinition of what manhood is, right? Um, and I look at it from this point because every culture is going to look at manhood a little bit differently. But like specifically for us as Black men, right? Um, we have seen where men are to be the strong leaders, in our community, right? But we've also at the same time seen where those very same leaders that we ascribe to have abandoned the basic family fabric, right? And so right now there is a tension there where it's like what we expect to see and what the reality is causing, I think, a lot of young Black boys to really not see clearly where the pathway is. They know to do right, but the examples are not always there, not always consistent, right? It does, for the most part, I think, really affect um, like their experience because, again, and Troy kind of mentioned this before, having somebody there to be that I need some advice on some certain things. I need some directions. I need that mentor, if you will, to kind of direct me on certain conversations and certain conversations that only a man to man can have, right? Those are the things that really help the development of young men and young Black boys to become men, right? If culturally we're seeing fathers, whether it be abusive to the women or not there, it does unfortunately cause a bit of a rift, and you kind of see it because you see our boys being a lot more violent than they really should be, right? They look at women, and it bothers me when I see Black men berate Black women for no reason. It like those things. It just bothers me to the core because they didn't do anything, but they're accepting the stereotype that's outside our community, right? They're accepting those stereotypes, and that shouldn't be the case within our own community, culturally speaking. We're here to build. We're here to build upon what will be the survival of our own community, which is the family. And if we are treating each other very poorly, it just becomes a vicious cycle, like not only for our Black men, but also our Black women, and so forth.
Wow.
So good. To you, Roxanne.
Yeah, I think Jermaine made a really, really great point. I also think that our society has really profited profited off of the backs of Black families. Systems have uh, really harmed our families and have ripped families apart and have said, oh, look, these Black families exist without Black fathers. Oh, let's make movies off of this. Let's make songs and music videos off of this. Let's you know, push the agenda of the news media and profit in that way off of this. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where these systems, these harmful systems, create this epidemic of fatherlessness, and then they make money off of this epidemic of fatherlessness, and then they propel that in into the culture, if you will, right? And then they, you know, this is art imitating life, and then what happens after that? Life imitates art, right? It becomes the norm, seemingly, to have these families without fathers, and what happens is we have these wounded young men growing up and having babies with these women, and then walking off because I guess that's normal, right? Or not knowing themselves what it's like or what it might look like to stay and be a father, to create a wholesome family. And, you know, as a society, we really have to look at how um, how the wider culture, not necessarily the black culture, but how the wider culture is impacting the black family. And if they're not almost physically ripping black fathers away, they're doing so um, metaphorically and making it seem like, well, it's normal for black fathers to walk away from their families, leaving these families ripped apart. And we really have to take a look at how this is being portrayed in our society, on our screens, on the news, in our movies. I mean, how many movies have you watched where a black man is incarcerated, right? How many movies have you watched where, you know, the mom is single, right? Kid has no father, kid gets in trouble. Like, these are things that we have to look at. And it's reaching, it's far reaching, and its tentacles are reaching into our families today, impacting the lives of our children today, impacting their mental wellness today and for the next few generations.
Also, on top of it, the hypersexualization of black men on top of that.
Yes.
That's a big one too.
Talk the things. Yes.
There is definitely a narrative that's being perpetualized constantly that we are being fed, that is feeding into this. And Troy, I'm going to come to you and you, but I think about just quickly from an economic and social services standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
that women are actually receiving more money,
Mm-hmm.
more governmental help if the male father is not
there.
in the home.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What is that saying? And so it's almost incentive that I
incentivized,
got to do this by myself to even be able to benefit financially.
And who's
Troy,
creating those
and
policies?
who's creating those,
And
right?
who's benefiting
And
from those policies?
who's creating the system, from what lens,
Exactly.
who's benefiting? It's all Eurocentric. Yes, you're right. And it's very
Exactly.
colonial, isn't it? Let's call that out.
Yes,
It's very
100%.
colonial. Troy, I'd love to hear your thoughts, even just personally, like just from societal pressures to external factors. What are the things that trigger, amplify, have perpetuated this fatherlessness issue for you?
Um, well, right now, I'm just kind of looking up statistics, so I'll go with some statistics first. And I'm not sure when these were happening, but they say 57 percent of Black children and Hispanic children are living absent along their biological fathers, right? But then they also say that, I mean, this report was issued back in 2013, but it's still that they found Black fathers were the most involved with their children on a daily basis. So it's kind of interesting what the numbers say and what the report says, but then what the media says is opposite, is what we were talking about before. Roxanne mentioned and Jermaine mentioned. And to me, we are actually seeing, we're actually seeing it on social media right now. Canceled, Black men are being canceled in numerous numbers. I was just saying that in the entertainment industry, I'm like, I feel like entertainment industry is now becoming like you have to be a politician now. If you have a not so clean past, you don't even bother being an actor now, because who knows who's gonna come out of the closet and be like, oh, he did this to me. You know what I mean? We're gonna cancel him and stuff like that. So it's just the media is just perpetuating this whole attack on us, you know, and then culturally as well too. I could sit here for hours. I'm gonna try to like clean up my conversation. Culturally, even in the church, you know what I'm saying? Like we don't we're not really like encouraging Black fatherhood within men. I could tell you that I've been to visited so many churches, and it's just like, okay, yes, I'm Christian. Yes, I follow Jesus, but like there's something happening already in our homes, and like we're just left to our own vices to take care of it. Like, I wish there was more out speaking on fatherlessness, more, and it sucks because Christianity, we have no color, right? But we know that there's something going on in our homes as Black men, black fatherhood. Like there needs to be attention there, So all social media is doing is just putting a magnifying glass on our problems, and all the music and entertainment is just showing, hey, black men are this, black men you know are not there for their kids. They're just these type of black men, and the worst part about it is it's us that are also resharing and doing all this stuff to our own community, like, it makes me wild sometimes. I'm like, why are we sharing all this stuff? We're sharing the failures of black men daily, all the cancellation. It's affecting our children. The children are just like so numb to all this stuff that's happening now. So, and then of course, even on a cultural, like, I live in a very, even my neighborhood right now, um it's now become more of a Muslim community, and it wasn't that like 10 years ago, because they stick together. What do black people do when we get some money? We trying to move outside the city by ourselves, whatever. Like, it's looked down upon if you live with your parents and stuff like that. So everybody's struggling outside of the home, versus why aren't we building together, saving up money? I'm gonna buy my house, you buy your house, you buy your house, let's buy a community. Like, and I don't know, man. I just have so much more to say, but I'll just leave it there for now.
I,
That's
I just, sorry,
no
I'm
worries.
going to throw to you, Dwayne. Another thing, this is also good. Another thing I wanted to say is for the Black fathers who are trying, you talked about this, Troy, who are trying to stay, trying to be good fathers. Here you're saying this, the data proves that Black men are actually incredible fathers staying in their homes. You'll never see that anywhere outside of that clinical data. But when they are fighting for children in custody battles, when they are trying, I'm thinking about the situations of like child support, that the women
Yep.
are believed, the women are favored in the court system. The men don't even have a
Don't have a chance. Yeah.
chance. It is. We've seen story after story of kids being ripped out of out of loving fathers' hands into abusive mothers' hands, and imagine what that does to a
Hmm.
Black male as well, when they're
Yep.
trying to do right. So
No, it's so true,
thank you
and
for that,
we
guys.
hear these stories, Troy and I, all the time. Troy has an amazing event that I'm sure he'll talk about,
Yes,
Iron Sharpen
iron
Iron,
sharpening
and
iron.
every first Monday of the month we sit and we hear stories about this, about
Friday.
Friday, right? About black men
Yeah,
who
Friday.
desperately want to be fathers, black men who desperately want to be in their kids' lives, but the system, has empowered women, as you said earlier, Cheryl, have given them resources to operate on the out without the male present. And it is destroying families, and it's doing major, major damage. So it's something that we definitely need to
But even,
conversation on.
and even beyond the system, I'm so sorry. Even I'm so sorry. I'm just passionate right now. Even beyond the system, there are women out there who are not allowing the black men to see their children, even on their terms.
Talk about it, Troy.
Don't you want to break?
Yep.
Don't you want to rest?
Mm,
Like, why can't he show up in that child's life? But there's so many fathers who have this similar story,
yes,
and it's really saddening and heartbreaking, because it's like, not only do we have the system against us, but once again we have our own people against us.
yes,
Mhm.
yes.
And you asked a question. No, this hits hard for me. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why, and it's not in what you said. It's what in what you didn't say that hit me hard. You were asking a question. Don't you, as a mom, want to break? Because we're
Want a
talking
break.
about women being overwhelmed. We're talking about
Yes.
women having no
Mhm.
Yes.
capacity left, becoming
Yes.
bitter, hardened, cynical because
Mhm.
of life. And so,
Uh,
what they're doing out of their own like fruition is they are perpetuating this cycle. So my question is, don't you want to break the cycle, my sister?
Mhm.
Yes.
Here are
Yes.
black men that are trying, as you say, Troy, to be good fathers,
Be
trying to do
present.
right, trying to be present, trying to heal what has been generationally
Yep.
broken, and you're standing in opposition of that. It boggles the mind. And it
Hmm.
breaks my heart.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's so true, and
Thank you for sharing that.
man, we keep thinking these are
I
light
know, I
subjects,
just don't even
and
know
they just get so real,
so
so
much.
heavy.
Yeah.
But let's go to the next question. I'm gonna throw this. It's a question. I'm gonna change a little bit for you, Troy, because I think it's important that I ask you this question. How can black men who have experienced fatherlessness work towards healing and developing positive relationships with male role models as adults? And I want to kind of get your perspective as a father of a son, but also as a someone who's influential in the community. You are an owner of a media company and you are putting out content. How does that influence your perspective in terms of your experience as experiencing fatherlessness? How are you trying to flip that to more positive relations as it relates to the absence of fathers for black men?
Um, so for me, and we talked about the men's group that I do every first Friday of the month, but for me now, it's just like accountability, for myself, for others around me. Um, I want to, I want to be what I was missing for others. Like I feel like God has given me this purpose now to be like, yo, you've gone through this stuff because you're gonna help others get out of it. And I'll just be transparent. Cheryl, Dwayne, you guys know me. Um, it comes down to financial responsibilities, down to cheating, abuse in relationships. Like if I share what I've done and what has happened to me, I'm hoping that it will help other men and younger men as well too to hear this, because once again it comes down to that navigating system. Like here are the warning signs that I never got. Take them. Does cheating on your wife, does it feel like death? Yes, it's going to feel like death. Are you going to regret it? Yes, you're going to regret it. Why? Because I've been through that. I've also had not have also not had a father in my life to show you different. You know what I mean? So I'm like really passionate about this because I'm just like, yo, like don't do what I've done because you're going to regret it. You know what I mean? So I try to use these platforms, whether it's theater or film, to put these messages in there. And whether it's like big warning signs or just small seeds, I just want every man in there to just think about it. You know what I mean? Even for my female relationships, when I've heard women say, he's arguing with his dad and I don't want him to go to house. I'm like, no, you need to send the boy to go to his father's yard this weekend. You know why? Because not even just not for yourself, but it's for your son. Please take yourself out of this. I'm just tired of hearing this excuse. Oh well, every time he comes back, I have to. It does. I'm sorry. Every time he comes back, that's fine. You have to spend time with him and have an emotional minute to get him back on track. That's fine. At least he got to spend time with his dad. At least he has that relationship. So not only am I just trying to take accountability for men, what I mean, with the stuff that they're going through, showing them what I've been through and what I've just been trying to be an agent of change, but also like, reality is my actions have spoke louder. You know what I mean? Life is fortunately taking a turn for me, and I wish I had that voice. So now I'm just trying to be that voice for others who need the Holy Spirit to turn up the volume. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at.
And the truth is that the wound, the sadness of having to sort of like be with dad for a weekend or a day or whatever, and having to leave, that sadness of leaving does not compare in any way. It pales to the wound of fatherlessness, period.
Period. Yeah.
So let that young child, boy, girl, be with their father and get that relationship, that nurturing, that wisdom, that shaping. Yeah.
100%. I'll throw to you, Dr. Roxanne, just to kind of
So good.
reset the question. How can black men who have experienced fatherlessness work towards healing and developing positive relationships with male role models as adults?
So I think we first need to really have some awareness of how that fatherlessness has impacted you, right? How the things that you crave internally, the wounds that are still there that need to be addressed, and having creating the space for the relationships, because there's often this idea of I don't need anybody. There's nothing wrong. I'm strong. I can do this by myself. You know, I recently saw a clip where Jay-Z was talking and he was saying that he has seen many fights when he was growing up that have started from a young man noticing someone else looking at him saying, "What are you looking at?" And recognizing that that came from a place of that person having woundedness and someone looking at him and him thinking, "You can see my woundedness. And now I'm going to fight you because no one's allowed to see that." So recognizing that there's woundedness and allowing yourself the capacity, um, allowing yourself the grace for someone else to look into that, for someone else to speak into that, and understanding that when we have mentorship relationships, oftentimes that can actually uh, heal the pain of that fatherlessness. There's a lot of talk around bonding and attachment that happens in a child's life when they're really small, and when there isn't that secure attachment, there's still a craving for that. And once you can um, have a close relationship with another adult in your life in terms of a mentor or an older brother, a therapist, a stepfather, but someone else in your life who can speak into you, you can actually recreate that secure attachment that was missing when you were 5, and we can rebuild on that and then start to have healthier relationships around you just from having that one mentor. So we have to open up ourselves to that possibility, allow someone else to see that woundedness. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you're weak because of it. It's actually building that strength.
Very quickly, and both Troy and Roxanne pretty much hit the nail on the head. Um, Again, going back to understanding kind of how fatherlessness or a lack of an engaged father has affected you, you gotta be real with yourself about this. Um, and I know, Dwayne, you kind of alluded to this in your experience, but just having that awareness of kind of where you're at and how it's affecting you is gonna be the first step. But also the second step, and I'm glad that, people like Troy are doing this, finding a group, finding somebody, especially a person that is very integral, right? Um, sometimes, sometimes one of the things, and I'll flip it in somewhat of like a business perspective, right? I'll use that as an illustration. Usually, successful business people usually go to people that are not only successful, but will give them the hard truth. Will say, okay, listen, I'm looking at your business model and I'm seeing what you're doing, but you're going to have to flip it this way. It's kind of like the same thing when you're trying to find somebody to kind of help walk with you through this journey, right? You have to be aware to accept some of the, not only just the praise, but sometimes the criticisms, the constructive criticisms, because that's how we build accountability amongst men, right? That's the one thing I get passionate about is sometimes there's that lack of accountability as we grow up, because I think when we look at how a lot of men and a lot of boys have gotten to where they are, sometimes there's that lack of accountability that's missing. But when you're surrounded by people that really care, that are going to be non-judgmental, but at the same time keep you accountable, that really is the way where you can see the healing start to commence. And as Dwayne alluded to, you'll be on the other side of that pain.
Yes. Wow. Thank you.
So good.
Mhm.
This has been an incredible conversation. I know we could stay here forever, but
Yeah.
we do have to begin to wrap up. I've got one final question for all of you. As you know, this podcast is called The Safe Space. So this is that moment in a safe space, as raw, as passionate as you want to give it. What is your final message on fatherlessness? I'll start with you, Roxanne.
I would say give yourself the space that you need to heal, and understand that just because you may have grown up in a situation of fatherlessness, it does not mean that you cannot be a good father, right? Get the support, the mentorship, and the healing that's available to you so that you can start to pour into your own children, because you can certainly provide for them what you didn't have for yourself. And as I said to a client a couple days ago, that the process of parenting in a way that in the way in which that you didn't receive parenting can actually be a part of the healing process for you. So give yourself the space and open yourself up to those opportunities if possible.
Thank you for that. Troy, your thoughts?
Um, I would just like to tell men and women, get the therapy that you need. I know we've been talking about this the last few years, black therapy in the black community is looked down upon. But I think in order for us to be our best selves, we need to start there, and then we can start being better fathers to our children, better mothers and stuff, to our sons. And I just want to just tell the men out there, if there's anything in this world that your children needs the most, it's time. A lot of us stay away from our children because we feel like we can't afford it, feel like this obstacle or that obstacle, but just showing up could change the world, you know. Um, and yeah, and just we just need to hold ourselves accountable as men as well too. If I see you out popping bottles and I haven't seen you with your child, I'm gonna ask you what's going on. I think we need to rebuild this village, a whole new village, because I was talking to some elders about this as well too. Like, yo, we need to rebuild the village because it's a different time and different era now. The Bible's gone through so many different translations. Like, we definitely need to rebuild our village now. And that's it.
Thank you,
So
brother.
good. Thank you for that. And Jermaine, you have the final word.
Um, we've talked about this a lot where, black men, we need you. Um, and it's not just we need you to exist. We need you to re-engage with the rest of us. Black men are powerful, but also we have been hurt. We have been scarred. We have been wounded. I think a lot more than we would like to admit. The opportunity is before us to now take control of ourselves, take control of our lives, to understand where we're at. And there's nothing wrong if we have to go back in order to go forward. That's what we're going to have to do. But we need to really hold ourselves accountable now and really raise our game both emotionally, both mentally, and spiritually so that we can see actual growth in our black community. Because I think sometimes we don't realize how powerful as a people we can become when everybody is engaged and everybody is participating in the pathway to healing.
So good. Dwayne, as always, I'd love to just hear your last thoughts. You've heard so much. I know this is almost like this is therapy for Dwayne doing this.
It definitely is. Jermaine said something just now, and it's so true. It's going back so that you can go forward. As I'm on my own personal mental health journey, it's the work of going back so that I can go forward. Because if I'm being honest, I feel stuck. I feel like I look in the mirror, and prior to last July, when it was revealed to me that I'm struggling with all these mental health challenges, that I don't recognize the man I see in the mirror, because now I see the man in the mirror through the lens of all the unhealed, unaddressed trauma. And so now it's like, okay, I'm going to do all this work. I'm going to go back, as Jermaine said, to come forward. But there's a sense of fear of who am I going to be on the other side of that? Who's that guy going to be? Because I only know the Dwayne who's lived his whole life with all of this baggage and stuff. So now when I go back and do that work and come forward, who's that guy going to be? Am I going to like him? Am I going to, what is he going to be all about? So I say all that to say not to be afraid to do the work, because I'm definitely want to do the work.
Yeah.
But that is one of the things that I know a lot of us as black men struggle with, is that, okay, this has been a part of who I am. This has defined me. And now I have to go back and walk through the hurt of an absent father, of all the things that have happened. Who wants to do that? But we have to, because on the other side, as I always say, I believe is the best version of ourselves. So please, brothers, let's not be afraid of that work.
Yeah, for me, I want to thank you all for being a part of this conversation. Roxanne, Jermaine, Troy, we needed to hear every single word that you shared on this topic. I think for me, as I close with you listening and watching, I think we have summed up fatherlessness in many of our lives as a fact. It just is a fact of what's going on and who we are, but we haven't realized how much it has fractioned us.
Yeah.
How much it has caused broken pieces and cracks and holes. And if we can see it as part of our mental health struggle, if we can actually liken it to things that impact mental health, not just a stat. I grew up without a dad. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
But ask the further, deeper question of how has that impacted you and your mental health? How are you shaped or not shaped because of that? If we just take a minute and ask the deeper questions, we would realize to our surprise how broken we are and how much we need healing. So if you're sitting here and you're listening and you've been maybe journeying with us and because you've of the other topics, depression, suicide, ideation, toxic masculinity, obsessive compulsive disorders, whatever we're talking about that seems clinical, I just don't want you to miss this moment because you think fatherlessness is not one of those things.
Yeah.
We've included it because it has a tremendous impact on the Black male community. So this moment is for you. Don't let this pass you by. We are speaking to you. Can I just say that one more time? This is for you. So take a minute and please seek counsel, seek therapy, talk to someone, join a support group like the amazing one that Troy has put together, or anything else in your city or area. Until then, we will keep seeing you in the safe space. More to come. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.